Welcome back, guys, to another episode of Chase and Health Podcast. I have a special guest with me today, Ebenezer Samuel. He is the fitness director for Men's Health, the largest men's media brand in the world, and a personal trainer for a wide range of clients, anywhere from pro athletes to the busy mom. Also head of training innovation at virtual training platform Flexit. Super glad to have you on the show.
Yeah, no, I'm glad to be here. It's a fun way to kind of end my day.
Yeah, it's also just a great way. I love reaching out, and I got this connection through Chase Tuning. I know you were on the Everforward radio not too long ago, and Chase is a great guy. He was on the podcast a few episodes back, and and just glad to have you on here and just really start to kind of dive into. I love your perspective, and we'll talk about more about this later, but just kind of where this mixes between the athlete and the busy mom. Like, I would love to know like trends and how those two mesh and common themes you see amongst both of them to keep them successful. And we'll dive into that in a little bit. But before we dive in here to that, tell us a little more about yourself. What is your story? How did you get into all of this?
Yeah, so it's a long story. But we'll try to keep it contained. Yeah, so I got into fitness kind of because growing up I was always very big into superheroes. And very quickly you learn like that's not a great idea to jump off a building and try to fly because it doesn't really work that way. But I think what I decided kind of early on is there are two ways like I can kind of be a superhero or kind of channel that like physicality, right? And one is like if you play sports, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like things that an Odell Beckham or a Michael Jordan or a Kobe like flying through the air for those are these amazingly athletic things that we and I about, and they kind of to some extent pro athletes are superheroes. And the other way is the other kind of road to being a superhero is looking the part. And a lot of superheroes are drawn with these massive muscles if you read comic books, and I definitely came up reading my fair share of Marvel and DC, and that's very very much like the guys in the Mr. Olympia competition, very much like the bodybuilding guys. I definitely came up reading a lot of muscle and fitness, wanting to kind of get into fitness, I think because of that, because I looked at those guys and I was like, okay, Superman has a whole ton of muscles and Frank Zane has a whole ton of muscles. So how, like, there's something going on here. So I can kind of train myself. I can get better. I wasn't a super terrifically athletic kid.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely wasn't the biggest kid. I remember going into my senior year of high school, I couldn't do a push-up. But I wanted to learn, or my freshman year of high school, rather, I wanted to learn. And so the other thing about fitness is you can work at it, right? It's not this kind of thing where, you either have talent or you have to be discovered. But the gym, once you go in there, it's like if I go in and I try to do, 10 push-ups off of my knees and I do that every single day, I'm going to get better at it. And at some point, I'm going to be able to push for a real push-up. And that was kind of coming up as a kid. I moved around a lot, and it was hard to get settled into a high school, hard to kind of, it's like you wind up on the basketball team or you wind up on the playground, nobody passes you the ball because they don't know what you can do, right? So there's an
Mm-hmm.
element of, in those situations, there's an element of you need other people to help you, right? It's not all about just pure work ethic, but in the gym it's about pure work ethic. If you put the work in, if you chase the reps, if you chase the weight, you like how I'm integrating your name to this, then you can you get better. And so I think I really, really appreciated that. I started doing it when I was, I think, 15, 16 years old. Um, did a lot of things wrong, but the more I did it, the more I kind of fell in love with it, and I never stopped. My journey takes a little bit of a different track in college because I wound up actually getting a degree in accounting and getting a degree in journalism. The accounting degree was awful. I did it because I had a scholarship, and it's also kind of like the Asian thing to do. My mom was like, okay, you're gonna go be an accountant, you got a scholarship, go do it. Realized pretty quickly that that wasn't for me. The whole time I'm doing it too. I'm in
Mm-hmm.
college. I'm lifting weights, going to the gym like twice a day, morning sprints, night lifts, this crazy schedule, and probably not studying nearly enough. Still managed to get the degree, but I pretty much knew, I think, the moment I stepped onto campus with an accounting major, that I didn't want to do it.
Mm-hmm.
So I wound up actually working construction for a couple months after I got out of undergrad. I worked construction because I was like, construction means I get to lift really, really heavy things for 8 hours a day, which I hadn't thought about the 8 hours a day part. But and learned a lot about kind of like functional strength on there. Learned a lot
Mhm.
about how I'm going to be if I do this for 8 hours a day, I'm going to wind up really, really tired by the time I get to the gym. So I need to tweak my workouts a little bit. Um, and learned that I didn't want to do construction for my entire life. So I wound up going back to school one more time for a 1 year intensive journalism program at Syracuse. And that was in the back of my mind. I was doing that because my goal was to cover sports. Because again, I'm trying in the gym, I'm trying to look like a superhero,
Mhm.
but I want to be around superheroes. So if I cover, the likes of Victor Cruz, Odell Beckham, I'm from New York, so I'm, rattling off Giants names.
Mhm.
If I cover those guys, I might learn how to move like those guys. I might learn a little bit of their workouts. And I remember like after I went to school, I wound up at the New York Daily News covering sports. And I remember going into locker rooms and talking to Victor Cruz, getting to know the Giants players, wound up training with some of them, had a really good time learning that. But everybody else was asking, hey, this is what happened on Sunday. What's your take on the game? And I would wait till everybody left and I'd be like, Victor Cruz, what's your ab workout for today? Because that's what I was really into. I did that for a while. Then about 5 years ago, I was looking for my next step. Men's Health had an opening for a fitness editor at the time. I
Mhm.
applied for it. I had been training people, never stopped training myself the entire time. Um, and I was like, let me give this a try. A little bit of a different look for me. Not sports at all, but let me get away from it. And let me try to do this. I applied for it, wound up getting that job, and kind of the rest from a fitness standpoint is history. Since then, I've been pretty much doing exactly what I do every day anyway, which is, hang out at the gym, think about the gym, and figure out ways to write about the gym and present fitness to a very, very general audience that is a lot closer to the soccer mom, as you said,
Mhm.
and it is to the professional athlete.
Gotcha. And let's tie those two together, like I mentioned in the beginning. So, if you've seen and heard what these athletes are doing, and maybe and train some of them as well, and then you have the soccer mom, the busy mom with 3, 4 kids, that's nonstop school activities all the time. What are some common themes between the two that they share that keeps them both successful and on track with their goals?
It's I think the interesting thing is that there are common things at all, because they are two very different populations. But I think some of what we have in those populations and why we think that they're so different is because of the rep and because of kind of the mystique around them.
Mhm.
When we think of the soccer mom, the soccer dad, the family, like the average person, there's an assumption in there that they're not going to be consistent, that they're the end of their day, they just want to like go home and rest and watch TV. When we think of the athlete, we assume for some reason that they spend literally their entire day in the gym, and that's the mystique built around it. That's what kind of the journalism that we're
Mhm.
in terms of sports or whatever is designed to. And that's also kind of like our tall tales, right? We tend, like, if you ask a pro athlete how long he spends in the gym, he's going to tell you 3 hours because he feels like he's supposed to say 3 hours.
Oh,
That's not to say that these guys don't train hard.
yeah.
I think one thing, and I think there's also been an evolution for the athlete too. And I think this is the biggest common theme between the general population person, the soccer mom, the soccer dad, and the athlete. And for the general person, this has been something that they've kind of always wanted to do. For the athlete, they're starting to understand it. And we've got to kind of be nice to ourselves, which is kind of a weird thing to say. But I think what we had for about a decade, probably up until 2019, I would say, you had this CrossFit era. And,
Mhm.
most of the messaging around fitness was sweat, drive yourself into the ground. You didn't really work out if you can pick yourself off the floor and go home. You have to
Mhm.
be dead, right?
Yeah.
Um, and that was kind of fitness. And a lot of pro athletes embraced that because they thought that's the road to getting fit. I have a lot of former Giants friends who used to do CrossFit, and some of them did it when they played, right?
Mhm.
Um, a lot of them eventually pulled back on it. And this is not to rip CrossFit, because I
Yeah.
think CrossFit is evolving too. a lot of them pulled back on it because that approach to fitness, where you're constantly running yourself into a wall every single day, is one, it's not sustainable mentally, and two, your body isn't meant to do that, right?
Mhm.
I think what we've seen from the athlete perspective is these guys are starting to understand, one, that they have to recover, so be kind to yourself, and two, that it's better to, and it's something it's a saying we've all heard before: work smarter, not harder, right?
Mhm.
It's better to be more productive over fewer reps. It's better to be more productive over less training time, and but make that training really, really good. Make every
Mhm.
single rep of your clean high pull, make every single sprint you do, make every single box jump, make all of those quality and bring intent to them. And I think what you're seeing is athletes are starting to do that. The workouts are a little bit tighter. They'll train for, an hour and a half. Then they'll get away, they'll recover, they'll eat really clean.
Mhm.
Um, and then they'll be back again tomorrow. But I think you're seeing tighter workouts and you're seeing athletes start to understand, let's be productive in the time that we're on the field. I think the same thing, it's a little bit more for the general population person. What they're starting to realize is that idea of intent. And I think we, as kind of, or myself rather, as kind of like somebody who dispenses and delivers a lot of fitness, has to do a really good job of messaging out the idea of intent. Because what we have are the great thing with you know, the very consistent soccer mom or soccer dad, the reason they're able to stay in shape and the reason they're able to still relax a little bit is because they're consistent, right? It's not about a 3 hour workout today, a 3 hour workout Wednesday, and a 3 hour workout Friday, right? Give me 45 minutes every day, give me a half hour every day, and be consistent with it. And I think what they're starting to learn a little bit and understand too is, within that half hour, and again, within those reps, let's be quality about it. There's so much more information out there for people about form on exercises because of Instagram. Instagram's got a lot of bad to it, but it has a lot of good. So we're able to educate general population a lot better on the best way to do a deadlift, the best way to do a squat, the best way to do a bench press. And so I think when they're able to blend those form tips in their own workouts, or if they're working with me, they're able to get more results because they're consistent. They go hard in the time that they're there, and they have intent with the way they move.
Yeah. And I'm just kind of curious, and I'm just also playing the devil's advocate, just because in case there is, the soccer mom, soccer dad out there that says, I really am so crunched on time, like they can barely find 15, 20 minutes, 3, 4 times a week.
Mhm.
Would you still say that if they apply that same consistency and work ethic to that short amount of time period, that they could still be successful towards their goals?
Definitely. And so I think that time, and we've actually done, I believe, a bunch of surveys on Men's Health. I feel like everybody knows it too. Yeah, time is the biggest issue because,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not unfair either, because a half hour workout is never really just a half hour workout, right? There's
Mm-hmm.
10 minutes to go get changed, 10 minutes to get changed afterwards, 15
Exactly.
minutes to shower, 20-minute commute. There's all these pieces. So a half hour workout feels daunting. So one thing I try to do with clients, and I really try to think about both in my work with Flexit and in my work with Men's Health, is how do we bring that down and how do we make it manageable? And it does. It's everything starts with consistency, right? I
Mm-hmm.
think one of the issues, and I feel like it's almost like a part of American legend these days. The fact that we come off the holidays and that's when you go get your gym membership and you show up and you go hard for about 2 weeks, and then by February you're done with the gym. It's kind
Mm-hmm.
of like a rite of passage for us. And the better approach is, I don't care how much you give me, right? If it's 5 minutes, 10 minutes a day, but let's get that movement in, right? I think
Mm-hmm.
one of the big evolutions we need to see as a society, I'm jumping around a little bit here, but I think this is an important point that I don't want to forget. One of
Mm-hmm.
the biggest evolutions we need to see in terms of how we as a society view fitness is, fitness doesn't need to be kind of this super structured workout. It's just about movement, right? Movement is what's going to get us to longevity. It's going to keep us enjoying life for longer. if
Mm-hmm.
you don't if you don't use it, then you lose it. But that doesn't mean you have to go bench 200 pounds every single day, just a walk. So I think we need
Exactly.
Yeah, we've got to work to make fitness bite-sized and fitness more manageable and make it feel less daunting, make it just feel like life. And that goes into basically my answer to, if you are super tight on time, what do you do? And I like to say, give me 7 minutes a day. Okay. Because 7 minutes is really tight. Now, I can't turn you into Chris Hemsworth in 7 minutes. Let's be realistic. But I can get you moving in the ways that are going to help you feel better, get you moving in ways that are going to help you move better and be able to play with your kids in a much more satisfying way. I can do that in 7 minutes because it's all about activity. And the thing with 7 minutes is you might break a little bit of sweat. Like I can get you sweaty in 7 minutes. So yes, you might have to take a shower afterwards, but it's simple, right? It can
Mm-hmm.
fit into people's days. It's literally, I swear, like you're going to spend longer on Netflix than you are on 7 minutes. So I like to use 7 minutes as a starting point. And I'll do this with clients, especially new clients, or people who are a little bit, they want to work with me, but they don't feel like they can commit to longer workouts, especially remote. I'll just send them a super simple 7 minute workout. It'll literally be body weight exercises, done on a basic 40 seconds on, 20 off, but it gets them moving. And it's something they can do every day. And what invariably happens, because so many good things just biochemically and hormonally happen once you get moving, especially if you've never done it before, or if you haven't,
Mm-hmm.
if you've spent so much time watching TV, playing video games, etc. So many good things happen that what invariably I've seen time and again, and this is more anecdotal than research based, but I think it does matter in this situation, is eventually the person wants to do more. They're like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
7 minutes got me moving, I feel great, right? So where do we go from here? And that 7 minutes gradually evolves into 15 minutes, into 20 minutes, into a half hour. And I think that's what ideally we want people spending like a half hour, 60 minutes moving every day, at least. That shouldn't be a lot, but it starts with 7 minutes. And I think if you make it super bite sized, just make it super simple like that, we can get people moving the way they need to.
Yeah. And not even, and, and kind of even like just kind of twisting some like the mindset piece in this and the identity piece is like, I'm sure there's the people that feel like, they're not somebody who can work out, every day. And once they're able to prove them to themselves, going a week straight of those 7 minute workouts, it's like, oh, I can exercise every single day and I do exercise every single day. And so it just kind of flips that little like switch in your head as well. I'm sure, not only do you start feeling better, but it's like you feel better about yourself and more confident about yourself as well.
Yeah, exactly. Because it's wild, like because going to the gym is daunting for people,
Oh, of
right?
course.
You walk in, what machine do I hit? And even also planning out, especially if you're not working with a trainer. And some people are just gonna want to figure it out for themselves. But it's like, what exercises do I choose? There used to be, there were hundreds of exercises. Now there are millions and millions of exercises on Instagram. And so
Mhm.
where do you start? And even if you're planning out your own stuff, it's a lot easier to plan it out in a 7 minute chunk than it is to plan it out in a 45-minute chunk. So, but it is all about the mindset, right? Because all I'm really doing by getting you to move 7 minutes is getting you in that place where you kind of realize it's possible and realize it's not going to take as long as you think it has to. Because I think that's where like all the messaging we get says you have to take an hour class or
Mhm.
are training for 3 hours a day. And that's the only way to get your body. That's the only way to get yourself in shape. But we as an industry, or the fitness industry, needs to make that a lot more manageable for people, because it should be manageable.
Yeah, and sure. I mean, like you said, it all goes back to expectations as well. I mean, if somebody is, most people that don't are hard on time, they're not looking to have the rock solid abs and all of that. Like, granted, like who would not want that? But also, like, they are realistic and they just want to feel better and have a better quality of life as well. Living without pain and be able to play with their kids and be able to do their job without less limitations. And so that's the main goal there, I would say.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the I think one of the interesting things as a trainer is a lot of times, to some extent, your client knows, or they have an idea of what they want, right?
Hmm.
But a lot of times it's on the trainer, I believe, to help them understand what they want. And but there's an aspect of it that's on the trainer to help them understand that. And a lot of times, even when people come in and they want the rock solid abs or they want the bigger biceps, yes, some of it is aesthetic, but there's also an element that comes with the rock solid abs that maybe they saw that and they want the visual, but they also want their back to feel better. Right. And a lot of times, if you can get somebody feeling better, that's kind of that's the deep down goal. That should be the goal for trainers as well, because a lot of the stuff that we do purely for aesthetics, a lot of stuff that bodybuilders do purely for aesthetics, a lot of times it's not. Sometimes it's not really sound in terms of movement. And so it's almost better to like I try not to give people too many bodybuilder movements. I really just want them to move better. And along the way, they may get abs too. But first they're going to feel better. And then once they get to that feel better point, a lot of times they're like, oh, I don't need the abs. I'm really, really good where I am.
Yeah, exactly. Have you learned anything that has like changed the game for you and clients, and regardless whether it's the athlete or the soccer mom, that in for both fitness and recovery? I mean, we were talking about recovery earlier, but is there anything that you've learned throughout, working with all these types of people and, all the different, aspects you've trained and such? Any big pivotal things you've noticed that have, really changed the way you train people?
I'll actually give you the recovery one first, just because I'm
Okay.
actually coming off of, I think I had to lead a wellness and recovery panel about 2 weeks ago, so it's on my mind.
Okay.
But recovery is this, and we've also done a lot because recovery is this big kind of burgeoning space now that
Mm-hmm.
about 10 years ago, recovery constituted, I'm going to go home and lie on my couch and I guess I'll put ice somewhere because I'm supposed to. And that was it. And now we have all these tools. And I obviously wind up with a lot of these tools in my capacity in men's health. And I'm working with a lot of people who now have these tools on Flexit. But the one thing I think with the recovery space is it's all about, and I think this is the important takeaway for everybody, it's all about down regulation. And that doesn't look the same for anybody or for everybody,
Mm-hmm.
right? So we have all these tools in the market. And I know probably about, I would say 3 years ago, so I've been at Men's Health for a couple of years, and I get to try all this stuff out, right? From cryo to the compression boots to massage guns to this. I've tried it all. And it can be overwhelming at times, because what was happening to me about 3 years ago is I was trying to make sure I got a session in with the compression boots, and I got my time in the salt room, and then I got my cryo in, and I would be rushing to all this stuff and trying to fit it in because I was like, I'm training hard. This is the only way to really recover, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the result was I was actually kind of stressing myself out. I would go into the cryo chamber, but I had spent like 20 minutes fighting through traffic and like yelling and screaming and driving my heart rate into the stratosphere because I'm probably not a really patient driver. And so I wasn't really getting the whatever recovery effects I might have been getting from the cryo were being negated by all this like extra pressure I was putting on myself. We wound up doing a story on all these kind of next level recovery therapies out there. And a lot of the research on that stuff it's good and it's emerging, right? But it's hard to really pin down, oh, this, compression boosts do this for you, the infrared sauna does that for you.
Mm-hmm.
But the reason people gravitate to it, and the reason every single NBA player I've ever met has a compression boost, is because they make you feel good, right? So I think you come back to this idea of I think people need to keep their recovery simple. Don't overthink it. And just look for the thing that's going to down regulate you. Don't get too caught up in the almost like the reading all the stories and trying to be on the cutting edge of recovery.
Mm-hmm.
Find the thing that's going to down regulate you. And it may be a massage from your wife at the end of the day, right? Or it may be the compression boost. Or it may be, in my case, and this probably sounds a little bad, but in my case, it may be from 10:30 at night until midnight, I'm going to play video games and not think about anything, right? But
Mm-hmm.
if it down regulates you, and we have these really cool devices out, in terms of wearables that can kind of track your heart rate and give you an idea of whether you're going in the right decision. Fun fact, if I play Call of Duty, my heart rate goes in the wrong direction. But you can track that stuff. So track for yourself and just make sure whatever you're doing isn't stressing you out and it's letting you take deep breaths. And that's what you need to recover, I believe.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Is there anything or what do you think is missing from the fitness industry?
Hmm. It's interesting because I feel like we kind of hit one of the things, which I feel like is, and I think it's evolving. It's that attitude of tight, quick workouts, and that's okay, right? I think we're evolving to that point. I think one of the biggest things missing within the fitness industry, and CrossFit for a while was I thought was doing a really good job of somewhat bringing this idea to the fore, and then CrossFit I think became its own thing. But I think one thing that's missing from the fitness industry is the idea of kind of hybridization of workouts. A lot of the fitness industry, a lot of trainers you're going to talk to, they all kind of say, hey, my way is the best way, right?
Mm-hmm.
Gymnastics is the best kind of training. Bodybuilding is the way to go. Olympic powerlifting is where it's at, right? And we're all kind of, all these groups are kind of siloed, right? The reality is, I think being human, right? And and if you're aiming to, if you want longevity, you kind of need a couple qualities from all these worlds. You know, you need the mobility that you're going to get from, you know, the pigeon stretch you do in yoga. You need that. You need the, you know, the bodybuilding mechanic motions are great, and they're the best way to learn mind muscle connection. So a lot of the stuff I learned, because I started in that world, a lot of the stuff I learned is descended from that. But if you're only doing that and you're never doing the more explosive style lifts, the kettlebell, you know, the kettlebell swings and snatches, etc. If you're not doing that, you're undercutting yourselves on explosive power and the ability to accelerate and decelerate. Nobody wants to run 10 miles. I hate running 10 miles. But if we don't do that, if we don't do that every so often, or have some kind of long cardio aspect in our workout, we're undercutting our cardiovascular system a little bit. By the same token, the guy who only runs distance is and never runs a sprint is undercutting his ability to really develop fast twitch. And that is what that explosive power that you get when you train fast twitch is the first thing that's going to go when we age. So I think what I really am hoping to see, and what we're trying really hard to push and show people at Men's Health, is this idea that hybrid is okay. There isn't one single discipline that's going to get you there, but there's something you can learn. There's something that you can really get out of just about any kind of fitness activity. And we need that. Your workout should never, over the course of your training, you're going to have blocks where, you know, you focus on the cardio, you focus on the strength, you focus on changing direction. But over the breadth of your training life, which should start when you're 1 year old and extend until that last day you're alive, you should have a variety of different motions, and you should try different things, and you should never feel like you have to be in a workout rut. I think we've got to do a better job of not boxing people into just HIIT or cardio or spin or anything, and trying to, as an industry, encourage people to mix it up, because life is about mixing it up.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I'm kind of take a backpedal for just a moment. I want to touch on something that you mentioned earlier, as far as like with like, and you just mentioned HIIT. And when we talk about like maybe like the 7-minute workout and things like that, something that popped in my head where I've heard, you know, some of these people say is like, you know, these HIIT works out are best for fat loss and things like that. Like, and I guess like my question is going to be that, you know, I'm trying to think what someone else maybe that's listening would be thinking is like, is HIIT, you know, if I'm trying to get a workout in 7 minutes, should I be doing a HIIT workout or a strength training workout? And I know it's kind of like it depends. And again, going back to what you just said, you should mix it up as well. But if someone is going for that 7 minutes, is HIIT the priority thing that they should be doing to get in the most bang for the buck, so to speak, in that 7 minutes?
Yeah, I would say no. So two reasons why. First of all, true hits, right, probably takes longer than 7 minutes to complete. The HIIT that we think of is kind of this group fitness product
Mm-hmm.
that, but HIIT stands for high intensity interval training, and I can't reach the highest intensity and then recover from that. And then recover from that and then go again, right?
Gotcha.
If I run, say, 100 meter dash all out, so that's kind of like a HIIT style effort. It takes about 10 seconds, takes a lot out of you. The guys who run the 100 meter dash, you know, in relays, then take, you know, it takes a couple of minutes, right? So
Mm-hmm.
so HIIT in its true form is definitely not appropriate for 7 minutes, right? Hit in its more common 7 minutes. There is research around 7 minutes, and there's also, I mean, we're all familiar with Tabata, right? Tabata is also something that very often, we think of it as 20 seconds on, 10 seconds off. The truth is, it is 20 seconds on, 10 seconds off. I believe it's for 6 or 8 rounds, so it's about 8 minutes, right? But the back end of 20 seconds on, 10 seconds off is 20 seconds on going as hard as you can, then 10 seconds off. And you can't repeat that every day, right? Because if you're going as hard as you should be, a side note, one of the things that grates on me in group fitness is when they put a plank in a Tabata, because you can't go hard in the plank. So
it's true.
yeah, but if you're going hard, you're not going to be. They say you should only do true hit something like 3 times a week max, because you need to recover. So that makes it also sort of limiting as a daily 7-minute workout protocol. The thing we can do every day is what's left, which is strength training, right? And strength training in 7 minutes, if you take the time to pick up some weights, do some push-ups, and I think resistance training, strength training, doesn't always need to be weights. It can just be body weight movements. You can hit your lunges, your squats, push-ups, etc. If you do that in 7 minutes and you do that every day, you're going to build muscle. And in the process of building that muscle, in the process of improving your strength, in the process of just burning the calories that come with that 7 minutes, you are going to eventually lose fat. It's going to take a while. Again, you can't look like Chris Hemsworth on 7 minutes, but we can we can put ourselves on the path to results by starting with 7 minutes.
Got it. I agree with that. Thank you for sharing that. So are there any, and I know that we kind of discussed some like things that you saw also like kind of pivotal, but is there any like life lessons that you've gone through yourself that you wish people would know up front so they won't go through it themselves?
There's a lot. I'd say one of the biggest ones, and it's actually one I kind of learned, because I think especially for guys, especially if you go in and again, you come up in either a bodybuilding gym or a CrossFit gym or whatever, the rhetoric and the feeling is still go hard. And you think you have to go hard, and you think you have to go hard to get results. And to some extent you do, right? I definitely came up in, bodybuilding, let me take sets till failure. And then early on in CrossFit, I had no idea what I was doing. So I was like, okay, let me program power cleans into muscle ups, into snatches, and just destroy myself. I'm going to do everything every minute on the minute for 15 reps and get no rest time. And I think the biggest lesson of that was, yeah, don't. But I think that one of the other lessons too was kind of to really be kind and think about how my joints move. So when I went through that CrossFit era, I actually wound up ripping up my left shoulder pretty bad. I wound up needing labrum surgery, so I have 6 anchors in there. And a lot of it was because I was self-taught, and so I hadn't learned kind of the proper technique for things as simple as a bench press. I would load 225 on because I saw all the bodybuilders doing that. And I would touch my chest and I would arch my back and my butt would be sky high on the bench, but the weight would go up. And on some level, I knew that mechanically that probably wasn't what I was supposed to be doing, because the weight went up, my shoulder hurt, but my chest didn't really feel a thing. Right. And so but I was like, I'm lifting heavy, so I think I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. I think coming out of that, I wound up spending a lot of time really learning the shoulder, kind of understanding external, internal rotation, understanding the rotator cuff. And I think one of the things that is missing, just one, overall kind of industry wide, and two, just in the way we think about fitness very often, is let's get kind of the mechanics down. Let's take time to think about the longevity of movements, right? Because there is a cost to doing business if you're not thinking about that. And I think you see it in guys like, you see it in some of these kind of ex bodybuilders, and years later they're not moving so great. And so they got what they had to in terms of the muscle, but in terms of the muscle building when they were competing. But then years later, they're struggling to walk, right? And so I think the thing I encourage everybody to do is really think about is this movement really worth it? If it hurts, yes, it might be. Upright rows, for example, might build my rear. They're going to build my rear delts. They're going to give me the traps I want. So yes, I could. There's nothing wrong with the barbell upright row in terms of what it hits from a muscle standpoint. It's also putting my shoulder into a lot of internal rotation. So when the older guy at the gym tells me not to do it, maybe I should listen instead of just rolling my eyes because it's the older guy at the gym. And so I think that's what, that's the big lesson I've learned is let me take a long view of these exercises and not just take a short-term view. So things like I'm really careful with, say, dips. I'll do them sometimes, but I want to make sure I'm doing them. I'm not trying to hammer away at them. Same with barbell snatches, barbell military presses. I think the other thing too that kind of goes along with that is not necessarily marrying myself to, and I think people don't marry yourselves to, there's only one way to do a movement, and I have to do this because everybody says I have to do this.
Mhm.
Biggest one for me is the barbell bench press. Again, like I can barbell bench, 225, 16, 17, 18 times. It's really cool. I very rarely do it and that's because one of the first lessons I learned when I started covering the Giants, the 225-pound bench press is kind of the legendary NFL combine thing. So I would go in, my question to a lot of the players when I got them by themselves is, how much do you do 225 for? Mostly because I wanted to see if I could beat. But what I wound up learning, I remember Justin Tuck was the first guy who told me this. It was a defensive end for the Giants for a long time. But I remember asking him the question, and he was basically like, dude, I don't barbell bench press at all. And I'm like, well, then you're just obviously not strong. Or that's what I was thinking. I think he saw the look in my face. And he said, so here's the deal. And he's like, the barbell bench in the long term is going to wreck your shoulders. So why would you do that? Why wouldn't you just do dumbbells instead? Um, and he was right. I can build a lot of strength with dumbbells. And we have all these tools now, in terms of dumbbells, kettlebells, so many different kinds of machines, resistance bands. And I think if we're thoughtful about using them and we avail ourselves of them and don't necessarily marry ourselves to one, and for this is the barbell, obviously we're talking about in this situation, but for certain movements, it might be, maybe it's a lot more natural for me to do a clean with the kettlebell than with the dumbbell. So let's find the most appropriate tools and don't be afraid to walk away from the barbell deadlift, for example, and grab the trap bar instead.
Yeah. I think that's great. And, I mean, I know even heck personally myself is like, you try to do what, the industry norm, so to speak, like pushes you to do, or what you see others doing, the ones on Instagram or, whatever the workout says, you want to do that, or, the classic, squat, bench, deadlift, want to do all the classics and such like that. So I'm glad you pointed that out. I think a lot of people will really resonate with that.
We have a really great series. So I work really hard on the MH Muscle YouTube that we do. I don't know if you've seen it, but we have a really great series on there called Overrated. And the whole object of Overrated is to take there are all these moves kind of that are in fitness that are kind of like gold standard. You feel like you have to do the barbell deadlift, the Turkish get up, the box jump, the burpee, right? And and what we try to do, we don't try to blast any move because
Yeah.
with rare exceptions, I think most moves have like some kind of place in the routine. But what we're trying to do is recontextualize, where does that move really fit in? Is that move really this thing you have to do? Because I think the other thing too, when you look at some movements and when we as a fitness industry do that to people, we say, if you can't do a Turkish get up, you're not strong. Right. When we've done that to people, when we do that to people for general population, for the average person, we just create this other barrier to entry. It's like, oh, I can't do a Turkish get up, so why am I even going to the gym?
Yeah.
Let's not do that because it limits it makes it hard for the general population person, and for the general population person listening. Just if your trainer says you ever have to do anything, you are justified to kind of push back and say no.
Yes.
There are things that are really, there are movement patterns we all need to go through in terms of, I think everybody needs to row. We all need to bend over to pick something up, which is basically a deadlift. And we all need to, have the strength to plank. but we need that core strength. But aside from that, there's nothing in the gym that we have to do or that validates us at all. Just we need to choose movements that make us feel good and hit the qualities that we may be trying to train and help us get to our goals.
Yeah. I always wrap up towards the end of the show and ask my guests every time. And I know we've covered a ton of tactical information already for our listeners, but I always like to ask, if someone is wanting to start today on their health journey, what would be your top 2 recommendations for them to getting started in their health journey today?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I'll try to give you different stuff than what we covered. The biggest one for me is obviously the 7-minute thing, but along with that is the idea of don't bite off, don't try to do too much too early, right? Let's like just get that 7 minutes, get that 10 minutes, get 15 minutes, but you want to make that commitment to do it every day, right? And commit to yourself and kind of make it like a set time. Because if you make it a set time, if you write it down, this is a very simple idea. If you write it down, and you should write down your routine the day before. If you write it down, then you kind of have to do it the next day. Don't leave yourself in this position where you're going into the gym ever and you don't know what to do, because you don't enter the gym with a plan, then you've given yourself a reason to not do it. So write down a routine, talk to your trainer about a routine, get a routine off the internet, get a routine off Instagram, make sure you have it, you put it aside, and that's what you're going to do the next day, because then you don't give yourself the opportunity to flail, and you've also to flail because you don't know what you're going to do, and you also don't give yourself the opportunity to be like, I don't know what to do, so I guess I'm just gonna, or to just sit there and think about it. You want to be in a position where the 45 minutes or 20 minutes or whatever that you're devoting to the gym, you have a plan, and so they're fully for the gym instead of for thinking about the gym. So I think that's my biggest tip. The other one is to keep it simple. There are a lot of exercises out there, and I love the variations. I love mixing it up, and I think that's important the longer you train. But when you're starting out, there are going to be a lot. There's so many different quality. There are a lot of things you could train, you have to train over the long haul that are good. But when you start out, just keep it simple. Think about 3 exercises and just three movement patterns, right? I think every person needs to row. That idea of horizontal pull, it's going to kind of reset our shoulders and protect our shoulders. It's going to help improve our posture. So every single person needs to row. You can like whatever row that is, you can look it up on the web. You can pull a barbell row, dumbbell row, body weight row, but you need some kind of row in your routine. Every person, and again, where I'm drawing these movements from is really just the way we move as humans, right? Every person needs to pick a box up, pick a kid up, pick their cat up off the floor. So you need to learn to do a deadlift. And then every person other than that, you need to develop a little bit of ab strength. So learn to do a plank, learn to do a hollow hold. If you just do those things, forget all the other exercises, including push-ups. Push-ups are a little bit overrated. Forget all the other exercises, hit those 3 things. Your body will feel better, you'll start to look better, and you'll burn calories too, because there's a lot of bang for your buck in those ideas.
Awesome. Eb, thank you very much for coming on the show today. I really appreciate it. It's been a great time chatting with you.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me on, and keep fitnessing.
Yeah, thank you. Where can people reach out to you, and where can they find you at, and drop everything that you have there?
Yeah. So definitely at menshealth.com. There's a lot of me on there. Again, the Men's Health Muscle YouTube is our new project. It's where we're putting up a whole ton of video to kind of help people with their fitness as much as possible. So there, my Instagram channel is Ebenezer Samuel 23. And if you want to work out with me, on Flexit. That's www.flexit.fit. We can do virtual workouts. We can also get you set up with kind of shorter programs, longer programs, with stuff you just do by yourself. So those are the best ways to get at me.
Awesome. Guys, I'll put all of his information down in the show notes, so definitely go check that out. Eb, again, thank you so much for coming on the show. Appreciate it.
No problem. Thanks for having me.